Hello and welcome back to Uncharted Astrology. We have a supercharged Capricorn new moon coming up, so let's have a look at the chart and talk all about what you can expect and what you need to do to make the most of this energy. So, here we have the sun at Cancer opposing the moon at 8 degrees of Capricorn. Now, this opposition is what sets up the full moon. This full moon, being in Capricorn, is ruled by Saturn over here in Aries. And these two are making a square, and these two are making a square. So we've got a full moon facing a T square from the ruling planet of the moon. This actually also happened last month at the Sagittarius new moon when we also had Jupiter sitting exactly square to that moon. So we're seeing already some patterns emerging. And I think that the pattern that we can see here, especially with Saturn being square, is the message of slow your roll. Saturn is about the long game. Saturn wants you to check all the boxes, do all the homework, put in all the reps, think about the long-term practicalities of your goals and how you're getting there. And when Saturn is square to the moon and the sun at the same time, this is a major check-in point. Are you crossing all of your T's and dotting all of your I's? Have you checked all of your boxes? Have you put in your reps? Have you missed days? Have you gotten caught up in short-term ideas and pleasures and things that have been happening in favor or at the expense of those long-term goals? That's the kind of stuff that Saturn wants to know. Okay, so we are about 6 months from the Capricorn new moon here at the full moon, as is usually the case. And we're also at about the halfway point of the year of 2026. And so this is something that I think happens naturally and beautifully with the intelligence of the astrological system itself. We're halfway through the year. We're getting a check-in point on whatever goals we set at the beginning of the year, like around those New Year's resolutions. So, this is a great time to check in with yourself on whether or not you are playing your long game, if you are achieving your long term goals. And with Saturn being in Aries, this is not just about what you want to do, but it's about who you want to be. Saturn in Aries is about us being our own authority. It's about taking that drive and that will and that passion and channeling it through a Ford, because Aries is like fire and Saturn is like metal. Aries is about ourself, our identity, our will, our drive, our primal life force energy. And Saturn is about restrictions, boundaries, responsibilities, tangible, achievable goals. It's about our legacy. Saturn is the ruler of time and karma. And so with the square to the nodes here, we're getting a pause. Pause and think about, are we using our time well? And are we becoming our own authority of ourselves? Are we being the boss of ourselves? Okay, so we've got another pretty substantial square in the mix here that is absolutely relevant to this full moon. And that square is between Uranus and Mars, who's just entered the sign of Gemini, okay? And these two have not been together in the sign of Gemini for a really long time, since like the late 1940s, because Uranus has not been in Gemini since the late 1940s, okay? And Uranus is making a square to the nodes. South node is at 1 degree of Virgo, the north node being at 1 degree of Pisces, okay? So these are making a square to one another. This is another like T square where there's two things opposing and then one thing kind of receiving all the pressure. Now, in evolutionary astrology, when something is sitting at the exactly 90 degrees to the nodes, it's called a skipped step. And that means that this part of us can be getting a little bit confused and maybe getting a little bit stuck because it's halfway between and it doesn't know which way to go. It can also be kind of a thing where in order to pass go and collect our $200, we have to do this particular thing. So this is another choice point. Squares often involve a choice point, especially when that square involves Saturn, and especially when that square involves the nodes of fate. So we've got two choice points here. The first one is about how are we becoming our inner authority? How are we becoming our own boss of ourself? And this next one is about what is the path that we're going to choose in terms of our soul growth and development. Uranus, especially in the sign of Gemini, wants evolution, and it wants us to change and update the story that we have that governs and dictates who it is that we think we are, where we've come from, and therefore where we are going. Now, the South Node in Virgo is showing us what we need to release, relinquish, and let go of in order to more fully embrace our spiritual path. That is the North Node, which points to where we need to go, what we need to, cultivate more of in order to sort of stay with the upcoming energies. Okay. And this North Node is here at 1 degree of Pisces, showing us that rather than leading with facts and information, that's the South Node, and with details and steps and plans and analyzing, what we need to be doing is operating with faith, trust, intuition, creativity, allowing the void to bring forth things that maybe don't make sense, or that maybe wouldn't have been conceived of if we were thinking about things in a purely logical Virgoan way. It's inviting us to be dreamy and to come up with like utopian ideas and to try to make those a reality, even if we don't necessarily have, the proof of how that could work. Okay. So Mars, when it gets over here to this spot with Uranus in Gemini, it's activating this T square, right? And it is also activating this beautiful grand trine that we have between the outer planets of Uranus in Gemini. Then we have Neptune in Aries, as well as we have Pluto in Aquarius. Okay. And we can see that Pluto's at 4 degrees, Neptune is at 4 degrees, Uranus is at 3 degrees, and in a couple of weeks, they are going to be perfect. And Uranus is going to come into that 4 degree spot. We're also going to have some planets activating some other spots at 4 degrees. And so I'll talk to you more about that later, because that really, really, really kicks this up a notch. This whole outer planet storyline and collective evolutionary like wave that is pushing us all forward in beautiful ways. Back to this full moon. So as Mars comes into this point, he's actually activating this trine even more and at a more deeply personal level. Because as the outer planets are moving very slowly, they're happening in the background. They're happening at a collective level, and they're happening at a subconscious level, that these energies are subtly influencing and upgrading us. When we get to the personal planets, though, these move much faster, and they're called the personal planets because they affect us much more personally. All right. So Mars is just like Aries. The themes are the same. It's about our will, our drive, our life force, our vitality, our raw primal energy, and what we are like physically doing. So this can really activate the physical doing and the embodiment of the upgrades that we are individually experiencing as a result of this minor grand trine of the outer planets that's been forming throughout this entire year, and is coming to perfection in July. It's super exciting. All the astrologers are just geeking out about it, and we're really excited. I know it looks like the world is kind of a shit show right now, but that's just the old systems crumbling. And this minor grand trine is the new systems being birthed in the background, in the behind the scenes, in the, in the minds and hearts and the small communities, right? Okay. So Mars is going to bring that into a personal level. Gemini is about our minds, our thoughts, our communications, our daily living. And Uranus is insight, evolution, upgrade, innovation, doing things a totally different way. He's the rogue, he's the rebel, he's the maverick. He's the one who's like, that way doesn't work, and we're not doing it that way anymore, and we're going to do it this way. And it's just so obviously better his way a lot of times that like everybody kind of wants to do it that way. And so with Uranus and Gemini, it's really reactivating us to think about ourselves in a more evolutionary way, in a bigger way, in a more future oriented way. This can also be changing and upgrading and really shaking up the story of what is humanity's story. And so with Mars there, this can be really major activations. It's coming up to an exact conjunction in just a few days after this full moon. And so I don't know, the alien files just got released. Definitely a theme that could be coming into play here. Aliens and the disclosure reshaping what humanity thinks and the story of humanity. Okay, the next major theme that I want to talk about here is that Mercury is going retrograde at the same on the same day as this full moon. All right, and it's going retrograde almost conjunct Jupiter, which is about to leave the sign of Cancer. Okay, so we've got the Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter all in the sign of Cancer, all opposing the moon. Okay, and this to me is like a relay race. So Jupiter has spent about the last year in Cancer, really behind the scenes, tuning us in to our emotions and tapping us in to what is needed in terms of care for ourselves, care for our communities. I think it's a really beautiful representation of this energy that Mayor Mamdani was elected during this time and has brought a massive new level of care to all of New York City, making childcare totally free for all of New York City. That's one expression of this energy. And so just as Jupiter is about to leave the sign of Cancer and move on into Leo, Mercury comes up and it's like he's taking the baton and he's actually going to grab that baton, and rather than moving forward, he's actually going to go back. He's going to run back through like the second half of Cancer all the way basically to the middle of Cancer throughout the month of July. That's his retrograde time and span. And it's like they're saying to us, now is time to really integrate. So Jupiter is a transpersonal planet. It's happening collectively, but it's also happening personally. And so Mercury being a personal planet is helping us to take whatever upgrades, insights, expansions that we've had in this area of care, and to like really lock it into our minds and our daily routines and our ways of thinking and communicating, and to be more mindful of the way that we are caring for ourselves and the way that we are considering care to be an important and valued component of our communities and our culture as a whole. So when we look at all of these aspects together, right, we've got this square here between the T-square of the Sun, the Moon, and Saturn, which it's actually also squaring Neptune as well. Okay, and then we're adding in that we've got another T-square between the nodes of Fate and this cluster of Mars and Uranus in Gemini. Okay, so 2 choice points, 2 things that are saying let's slow down a little bit. Plus, we've got one more thing saying let's slow down a little bit, and that is Mercury going retrograde. And I think that a lot of this is very wise advice that we're getting from the astrology of the moment if we're looking at it and paying attention and interpreting, because In July, when, as I mentioned, this minor grand trine perfects at 4 degrees, Jupiter is also going to be moving into the position at 4 degrees of Leo, just right about here. So it will be sextile to this Uranus. It will be trine to this Neptune in Aries, and it will be exactly opposing Pluto in Aquarius. And that's going to be intense. The all the trines and the sextiles are harmonious, favorable, easy flowing energies. That opposition, that can be really intense. And not only that, but the activation of those destabilizing, like naturally destabilizing energies of Uranus in Gemini are being heightened by the fact that Mars is going to be there. So I think that the astrology of this full moon is telling us, yes, check in, yes, tune into your feelings, yes, think about your long-term goals and how you're getting there, but also don't be in such a rush because there is information and unfoldings coming in July that we don't know yet what they're going to be, and we may need to factor those in. They're probably going to be big. They're probably going to be like historical. And so, while it's definitely still important to be focused on where we're going, it's more important to be focused on who it is that we're becoming and what are our values and who do we care for and how are we embracing and making that an important part of our daily routine and what we're thinking about. Just to sum it up one more time to make sure that we've really got it, the message of this full moon in Capricorn is that we need to slow it down, think about our long term goals and how they apply to who it is that we're becoming, how we are expressing our authority over our own self, and how we are claiming our own spiritual sovereignty, how we're incorporating and updating the story of who we are, not only as an individual but as a collective, as a species. Who are we as humanity? And then to take into consideration what we want to do about this system that we have that neglects care, and how can we fill in the blanks of that system and care for ourselves and care for each other. And that's really the message that I'm getting, especially from this Mercury stationing retrograde on the day of this full moon. So I hope that this is making sense to you. Please let me know in the comments if you have additional questions. I'd be more than happy to answer them. I'm also available for readings. There is a link that I'll put down below in the description box. And I hope that you have a wonderfully fruitful full moon and that you're able to really like slow down, get internal, and digest. Mwah.